We good to go? All right.
Just like me.
I'd like to call to order the 5:30 p.m. May 25th workshop. Welcome, everybody. First thing on the agenda is Deschutes County Sheriff's update, Lieutenant Davis.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going well. It was a busy afternoon. Just got here after one of our West deputies just made an arrest on the other side of town. So got here as quick as I could.
Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
If you got to go, though, just tell us.
No, we're good now.
Okay.
Don't have a ton to report other than we started bike patrol this week. Finished up our class last week-ish. And then we've done about 9 hours so far of bike patrol the last couple of days, and it's been very good response. I was telling Corey, in 3 hours of being on the bike, I talked to probably more people than I talked to the past 2 weeks. It's so much more open, and you're much more approachable to the public. And a lot of those are visitors too, you know, not some residents, but a lot of them are visitors to Sisters. So I think it's a great program, and we're just gonna keep pushing forward, trying to get more and more time on the bike. So,
but I understand that there still is hesitancy about wearing cowboy hats.
yes. Yeah, we have to wear our helmets. So
I mean, you could find one that, well, never mind.
I don't have a whole lot else. It's just starting to get a little bit busier.
Yeah, I know it's still a couple months out, but 2.5. But any updates on planning for National Night Out, or kind of do it the same as last year?
Yeah, we have the date. I don't have it right on the tip of my tongue here, but we will be doing it, and it'll be similar to last year's.
Hopefully not as much smoke.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be planning on having it at the Village Green. I'll get you the dates, and we'll have more displays of vehicles and other deputies there, and
Perfect.
kind of same format as last year. We may add something to it, but yeah, we'll definitely be doing that again.
Sounds good.
And we're getting ramped up for rodeo. Obviously, we'll have a little bit more. Some of our Sisters deputies will be working a little bit more overtime during the week, just making sure have good presence during Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday night, just to have people out and about and keeping people safe.
So, sounds good. We have sort of a joint celebration event with C4C on June 21st, Tuesday evening or Thursday. Sorry, Carrie.
No, you're good.
And so if anyone was available from the Sisters unit to attend or wanted to use that an opportunity to stop by and just, again, kind of meet people and have that opportunity.
Is that here?
It's going to be at Creekside Park.
I'll send you an invitation.
Okay, great. Yep, I should be around.
Great.
Awesome.
I assume everybody got the stats a couple weeks ago. So the stats are offset like from the meetings now, but that just happenstance because sometimes they'll be.
We used to hold them for the meeting, and now we just send them directly to you.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. I was going through the stats, and you see there's some red marks here. Seems like a lot more activity this year as compared to last year. Just some of the numbers are a little larger, especially in January and February. So did it seem like we had more people in town this off season than we've had in the past, or?
Yeah, I think the weather was a little bit more mild at times, and so I think that contributed to it. You know, and sometimes it's, you know, in the summer months, we have more vacations and stuff too, so some of our numbers tend to drift a little bit because our regular Sisters deputies are getting in annual vacations and whatnot. So sometimes, like in July, you'll kind of see the number kind of dwindles when that doesn't really paint the whole picture. But the other times of the year, like, you know, yeah, January and February were some of our biggest numbers. If I remember correctly, they were quite active. So yeah, I think it's a lot of it's weather related.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Do we have school officers?
We have one deputy, that's Deputy Brent Crosswhite, who works covers all 3 schools, and we supplement him so when he needs help or there's extra presence at the schools today. Some people may or may not have seen, we had a deputy in the area of each school just for presence in light of all the things going on in the country, just to kind of reassure people. So we have a deputy stationed kind of close to each school, just trying to be out there and be present.
Does he have conversations or access to information about students that are struggling with mental health or, regression issues or whatever? How is he made aware of that?
So they usually come through there's a number of ways. Sometimes it's approached through the school staff or administration at the school if they become aware of a student that's struggling, or if there was some kind of a threat or a comment made. There's a whole Safe School Alliance protocol that comes into play when a student is identified as either maybe being suicidal or wanting to hurt other people, then that kind of sets the ball in motion for a threat assessment, usually a home visit of some sort, and those are usually unannounced so that we can assess whether they have access to firearms or other conditions in the home. And we make suggestions on if firearms aren't secured, maybe temporarily moving those from the residence, or making sure we can provide gun locks to people as well. And so there's a whole protocol that comes into place. Both law enforcement is a part of it, and then the school administration as well. And so they have a whole protocol that they follow in those cases. But Deputy Crosswhite's there every day, and the school administrators will call him directly. If he's not personally at the school, then they will call him and reach out. And he's in the schools all the time, whether it's just walking through, or if we're working with Department of Human Services. We do a lot of assessments with Child Protective Services. And so we're in the schools, every week doing something, whether it's assisting them or following up in the field. So the communication is very good on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to pass along a thank you from Jen Holland, the executive director at Sisters Park and Rec District, back a few weeks ago when there was the threat at Sisters Schools. She said that you went out of your way to go over to their facility and check in on their preschool activities and whatnot, and just really complimentary of the obviously the service, but the personal touch and having the relationship with you, in the lieutenant position and being part of the community. So just passing that along in a real situation that was uncertain. So
yeah, in that situation, I was in direct contact numerous times with Kurt Scholl throughout the day as that was kind of evolving and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. What was the right thing to do as far as sending kids home early while we worked on the case, and the suspect was eventually arrested over in the valley in Beaverton last week. And so we continue to work with our detectives on those kind of cases. They just don't go away. And so this case also brought up some of the gaps and things that we hadn't seen, because there's a preschool located at Well House Church. And so they actually called in, which was beneficial, because they called and said, hey, what information do you have, or what can we provide to our parents, and what should we be doing? And so it was a good exercise in that, and that we identified some places we didn't necessarily know. They have, I think, close to 50 kids in their preschool. And so, that's obviously someplace we want to be aware of. And so we actually went and did kind of a site assessment and a walkthrough before they started class the day after, I think that Friday. And so it was good that we added that to our list of one of our schools. So great. Thank you.
And I'm assuming that your deputies and others have walked the schools at some point?
Yeah, we walked both on the day that the threat came in, and then the morning of before.
Well, I guess I was meaning like when a new deputy was on, sometimes one of the things that we did in Springfield after the Thurston incident, which I was involved in, was, new folks in the police department and stuff would go in and go through the schools and kind of get a sense of the layout of the hallways, the doors, the access points, those sorts of things. Because no matter how hard you try to secure a building, I can guarantee you cannot secure it as well as you think you can.
Yeah.
And I know that for a fact.
We actually went through with Deputy Crosswhite last year when we kind of all got out here, and we went through each of the schools, and we included Black Butte Police with us.
Good.
And so we went through and toured all 3 schools, and Sisters deputies were all issued access cards as well, so we can get into the buildings. And then we also have tools to break into the school if we have to. So yeah, that was, these kind of things are a good learning educational experience for us as well, because we do identify some of those tools or gaps that we may have. So
Thank you.
All right. I have a question for you, but Andrea, having worked at the school district, there is a very quick response to any physical, emotional, mental concerns that any staff, from custodian to parapros to substitute teachers, have about a certain student. And it goes through the process very quickly. So,
It's good to know.
yeah, and we are definitely, they still are, I assume, tuned into all of the issues. So, and then my question for you, I'm asking for a friend, honest. I know inside the buildings there are cameras. Are there in the parking lots? And it's nothing related to this, it's a different job.
At the high school, there is.
Any of the buildings?
Any of the schools. I know, I'll speak to the high school. I know that there is a camera that faces out into the parking lot. I don't believe that there are multiple cameras showing, every aspect of the parking lot itself. We have some limited views of the parking lots because we've mostly had traffic complaints that or careless, reckless driving complaints that we've investigated using the cameras. And so I know there are, but I can't speak to, say, the middle school or the elementary school. It's a good question, but I'll find out for you and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Not really, it's honest, it's for a friend that
Uh-huh.
their job is kind of weird and,
We've heard that
What
before.
was she doing in the?
I heard you had your license plate covered up at the time, so I'm not real sure.
yeah.
All right, does anybody else have anything? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, next item on the agenda is review referral language for charter amendments.
So I'm going to take the start with this one. Jeremy is on the line. He'll be addressing either questions you have and/or some of the ballot measure information. So I was going to start with two updates that Corey and Jeremy and I have discussed that are changes from the last time that we reviewed this in workshop. And the first one is the recommendation that section 24.3, excuse me, which references the city manager living within the Sisters School District boundaries, be deleted. This would allow flexibility for city managers in the tight housing market and would allow the council to define the residency requirements contractually. So this came up mostly due to the high cost of housing in our area and some flexibility as we moved forward in the future with city managers. So that piece is up for discussion. I don't know if you guys want to discuss that now or if you'd like me to address the second item.
Why don't you go ahead and move on to the second item and then
Okay.
we'll circle back.
And then the second piece that we are recommending a change to is we initially recommended the removal of section 33, which references nominations for elected city positions. Section 33 is consistent with state election law, and although it's very wordy, it actually does lay out what needs to happen. And it's probably best that maybe is within our charter, so it can't be changed easily. And so you have two options when you are applying for a council, for us, an elected position council. You can, by the state, you can either pay a fee and do the registration or put in the paperwork, or you can do the petitions. And our charter states that you have to do the petitions, which it's not an abundance of signatures, but it is 10. So you do have to go out and get into the community a bit. So we just thought that could be left in. We didn't necessarily need to take it out. In conversations with Jeremy, we talked about really only addressing the pieces that needed to come out versus maybe could come out as we did the cleanup. And this is one that it could go either way, but probably doesn't need to come out. So those are the two that, before we move on to kind of Jeremy's portion and looking at the wording of the ballot measures, would love to get your feedback on.
Does anybody have any feelings about the housing number, the first bit? I think Gary does, but he's chewing, so.
Yeah, so
I'm trying
I was trying to get it down.
Trying to draw it out. Okay, go ahead.
I have held. The thing that I'm curious about, I don't disagree with the concept. I think it's a good idea. I'm wondering if we need to have something, and is this the place for us to have something that basically commits future city councils to that discussion? In other words, this basically says nothing, but it's gone. In other words, the elimination of requirement. It says it's up to city councils to make that determination. That's not stated in there anymore. So it no longer states that the city council will work with the city manager to determine residency requirements based upon the situation or something like that. And so I don't know if we need to codify that here, if that's a policy codification, something that needs to be somewhere else. I say that because actually we're going to have a new individual sitting over here. And when that new individual, I want it to be clear to the council at that time, to the individual at that time, that it's at the, there's a term, but it basically it's at the will of the city council as to what happens. So I don't want anybody to come in thinking that they're being misled or directed in a different direction, and whether that's done in the employment documents or whether that's done in the interview documents. But do we need, my question is, do we need to codify it somewhere? That's sort of the legal question of it. And is this the place or is it somewhere else?
So my quick thoughts, and then I'll let Jeremy either concur or offer other perspective, is that similar to some of the other topics that we are contemplating removing from the charter, we're not saying that the council and the city shouldn't have, to your point, policy statements or clarification about what the intent is or rules around those things. It's just that they shouldn't necessarily live in the charter. So I think if council wanted to move forward proposing the removal of that section in the charter, that what you all could do, either ahead of time or prepared to do right after knowing the results of the election in November, would be to adopt some code that says fill in the blank as it relates to an expectation for the city manager to live in the community, or however you all want to phrase that, because some clarity around that would be good. So you could either memorialize that in code and or in the contractual language, but backfilling the chart, I wouldn't add anything to the charter.
That was my thinking as well, but I wasn't sure, and I wanted to bring it up here because we're having the discussion.
Does that make sense, Jeremy?
It does, Corey, and I would echo your comments. If the council is concerned or adamant, I should say, that the city manager reside within the school district boundaries, you certainly could reflect that requirement by virtue of the city manager job profile, the city manager job description, and certainly in the employment agreement as well. So I like removing it from the charter because it certainly provides more flexibility, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't subsequently impose that on a city manager. It just, again, removes it from a document that is otherwise very difficult to modify.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm in support of, removing it. And to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of hamstringing future councils too much. Obviously, there are policies that we want to pass that are important to the city, regardless of who the next council is. But at the same time, I don't see a rush to have to make a code anytime soon. Obviously, when the next city manager is being considered, then that'll come up, and then whoever's on council at the time, whether it's some of us or none of us, I think that they can probably handle it. So, you guys good with that?
Great.
Okay.
Very much so. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't missing the opportunity here, because I'm with you. Once we vote this thing, assuming we pass it, boom. And we may have to have some public awareness that this is gone. If somebody, when this goes out to ballot measure, this language will be gone. Will there be anything that says what sections were deleted? Does that go in as part of the information packet that goes to the public, or is that, no, I don't know. I've never done this before.
So I think they'll need to vote on the language being removed.
Right, we're going to do that, and we're going to look at the language.
That's,
They're going to vote on the language being
Okay.
removed. We're not adding
So
anything.
that means that we need to have, as a council, and I think it's an organization, a pretty definitive statement that's ready to go out with it to the public as to why we're doing this. So that we don't have some people who feel very, very, very strongly that the city manager, the school principal, the school superintendent, the janitor who cleans the bathrooms, the public works director all have to live within the school district's boundaries, because there are some people who feel very strongly that way. And I would hate to see the other changes that we're having here in the charter be voted down because someone feels strongly about that one thing. So we just have to have a good publicity campaign as to why we're doing it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll need to strategize on how much of that education and clarity we can do. And, we'll need to consult as a team on that. And then I think that's, I don't want to say risk, but part of the conversation we've had around bundling these proposed amendments. And then, that is also the reality of the charter, is if the electors, the voters say they don't want something in there, then that's their right,
Of course.
to not vote for it, I should say.
But I think that it's also our right to be clear as to why we're doing it and what the reasoning is. Having lived in a
Understood.
household during all my teen years, and in all my years until I left home, that had a residency requirement, it's something that I'm kind of aware of.
So on the second item, 33, what's your thoughts on leaving that in?
I'm not lazy. However, I do like the 10 signatures. It's easy to do. It's clear to explain. People can understand it if they want to run for council. And so I would prefer keeping it.
I'm fine with keeping it. I think it's
You're fine with
a
that?
good system.
Perfect. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy so he can discuss some of the ballot titles and explanations.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, Council, I really don't have too much for you. We have discussed the proposed charter amendments at considerable length. We've discussed process as well. And so looking at the resolution in front of you, the draft, this is the resolution that is often termed a referring resolution. So if this resolution were to be passed next month, you would be effectively referring the identified charter amendments to the voters, and as well approving a ballot title and explanation, a statement, if you will. Explanatory statement is what it is referred to. If you were to look at Exhibit A summarizes the proposed charter amendments. It is, in my opinion, the most simplistic way of identifying the proposed charter amendments. Should these amendments be approved, you would see, of course, these amendments be reflected in an amended and restated city charter. Exhibit B is your ballot title. Essentially, a ballot title, as you probably are aware, consists of a caption, question, and summary. The caption is a caption of the ballot title. The question is the question that is being presented to the voters for approval. And the summary is, in essence, a summary of the proposed charter amendments. On Exhibit C, you have the explanatory statement. And this is perhaps a more detailed version of your ballot title. And so, in my opinion, where we should focus some energy on between now and June is Exhibit B and Exhibit C. We want to ensure that Exhibit B and Exhibit and Exhibit C concisely and accurately articulate what you believe should be communicated to the voters as part of this initiative process.
Do those show up? How much of those documents, Exhibit B and C, those show up in the voter's pamphlet?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, the council will approve the title and the statement. Carrie will, after publication, will certify and send those to the county. And once the due process has been completed, you will find them in the ballot measure, or in the ballot booklet, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. To Councilor Ross's question earlier about potentially additional education, additional clarity, to the example of removing the city manager residency requirement, we're not in any of these explanatory statements going to articulate that we could later require that through employment agreements or something like that. So can you just speak briefly what we can and can't do outside of what's actually going through the official process? How much outreach, how much education can we do, should we do from your perspective? I'm just not quite clear on
Actually, I
that.
kind of like this language. I think is well said, well written.
Does that make any sense?
So
My question there?
I believe I'm understanding your question, Corey. And the short answer is there's no law that would prohibit the council from educating the community as it relates to the ballot title and the intent of the ballot should it be passed. There's also no restriction or prohibition when it comes to the council expressing support of the ballot title and the proposed amendments. And quite frankly, the council's doing that by approval of the resolution anyway. So I would encourage the council to do so. As it relates to the language contained in these two documents and how we go about communicating to the public, my hope would be that Exhibit B and Exhibit C would essentially serve as your talking points. That's really my hope when drafting this before it was sent to you all for inclusion of the packet. We tried to come up with relatively, with Carrie and Corey's assistance, of course, we tried to come up with relatively simple language that we thought most people could understand. And I will tell you from experience, being able to include the most simplistic and understandable language possible is absolutely critical to getting ballot titles approved.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Just making sure that we could do additional handouts or flyers or articles in the Nugget, clarification if there are additional questions that are spurred by some of these potential changes. So yeah, agreed that we want it simple and straightforward, and with a little further refinement, it's mostly there. So
Jeremy, can I ask a clarifying question? This is Carrie.
Sure.
At what point, or is there a point that city employees can no longer do the work towards a ballot measure? Is it once it's filed or once they've approved the resolution, or is that even in play in this situation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I will double check whether or not that even applies to a situation like this. My knee-jerk or gut reaction is that it likely does not apply. But Carrie, I will certainly, as we're working through the refinements the latter part of this month into the first part of next month, I will certainly verify for you and provide you a response.
Great, thank you.
I appreciate your question, Carrie, because I had the same one, and I suspect since it's not a tax measure, that we're probably a little bit better. I haven't done 4 of these when I was in Willamette Lane. It's always interesting and tricky. So,
being that I'm not involved all the time, schedule check. How are we doing as far as getting it in there on time and everything? Are we way ahead of the game still?
No, we're giving ourselves plenty of time. We have it on the June 22nd, the resolution for approval. So we have time to rework any edits that you guys might need. And then we have plenty of time to notice and get it turned in well within the time frame.
and this is for the November election.
Correct.
That is correct. And Carrie, I'll just go ahead and tag along on your comments. She's 100% correct. We have more than sufficient time. In fact, the schedule that Corey, Carrie, and I had discussed during the winter months provided us at least or approximately a 30 to 45-day buffer.
Okay. Do you have a question?
I do have a question I'm asking for myself this time for educational purposes. In the voters pamphlet, there's the pro, why we want to make this change, and then anyone that's opposed has a page to rebut. Do we get those, being the city, get those ahead of time so we can make modifications, or they're all submitted at once and we don't get to see what any opposition might be thinking or saying?
I am not aware that we got those because with the marijuana measure, we didn't see those ahead of time. I think anybody can submit those to the county, but I can double check on that.
Thank you.
I felt a little uneasy reading the explanatory statement when it doesn't refer like to SDCs. It doesn't refer to some big categories of things that are being eliminated. And so would that come up under a pro argument statement for why we're doing it?
So I think that that's getting to the points that Carrie and I were asking about, of being able to elaborate further beyond the language that actually goes in on the ballot or in the voters pamphlet. So there would need to be some cross-referencing that, you know, the voter is doing to some extent, some education on that front. And I think that's just the challenge, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy in a second, but I think that's the challenge that we run of wanting to provide enough information, but still keeping it simple and concise.
So is the modified charter actually going to be in the voter's guide? So they,
No.
No,
they will just be taking our word that we're just modifying what we think is inappropriate but
They'll be able to, I mean,
No.
there's, go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry.
no, I'm sorry, Corey. I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, that's not necessarily the case. We make reference in both Exhibit B and Exhibit C as it relates to the availability of the specific amendments being proposed, being available at City Hall. And from my experience, that is very common practice because of the fact that we can't actually include all of these specific changes or amendments due to word usage limitations and, frankly, what can and cannot be included in an explanatory statement and ballot title.
so will it have Exhibit A in it? What goes to
It
the
will
voters?
have. No, Exhibit A will not be included in the voters pamphlet. What
Yes.
will be included in the voters pamphlet is Exhibit B and Exhibit C.
Exhibit A is just part of the resolution.
That is correct.
Through education and outreach, I think we can, especially for those that are interested and paying attention, which we hope is most of the voters. I think we can do a lot of work contemporaneously leading up to this to educate folks on what this means.
There is nothing, and in fact, all of us as city councilors have the right to submit a yes statement or a no statement to the voters pamphlet, either in support or in again, and in that we could provide within the word limitations that they give you whatever information we wish to provide. And again, done several of these and ran a yes committee. I mean, that's what the yes committee is for in the case of money matters. And so we have the right to educate through our voter pamphlet statements if we wish, as do people who, we may have someone who thinks that we're being woke by removing gender specific pronouns and be all upset about that. I mean, you never know what the trigger is going to be. And so you do want to do your homework, and I think it's very, very good. But putting in Exhibit A without having the document would not really do any good.
Well, they could bring it up online. I'm just trying, the idea, well, if I want to know what I'm voting on, I have to go down to City Hall and ask for it.
So we'll make a page available on the website as soon as probably the resolution passes and this is going to the ballot at that point. There'll be the notification, but we can link the red line document. We can link whatever you'd like to.
Okay.
So it's easy access. If you're talking to someone, you can say, please go to the page, read through that, and then come back with questions.
So
But
we
can
could
do
even
that.
have a yes statement for more information, go to, and then
Correct.
reference the website and the page. Because I'm with you, Andrew. I want to get the information out. The question is, how do you do it within the format that the state allows us to use with the voters pamphlet?
So to that point, I mean, Jeremy, amending Exhibit C, the explanatory statement, third paragraph, a description of the proposed charter amendments is available for public inspection at City Hall and on the city website.
Yep, I'm thinking that we reference the website in both Exhibit B and C. I think that's a great comment.
Hyperlink and all that.
Good job.
I mean, honestly, I can kind of see it in my mind, a graphic of Exhibit A, and then the charter over here and red lines going, that's leaving, and that's, just a,
Here you go, Carrie, another chance.
Another chart, awesome.
another chart. But anyway, so, I mean, I could see how it could work. And
Yeah, well, just
Possibly.
even what we got here
Yeah,
is
exactly.
very easy to understand.
Sure. All right, I'm in approval. I'm gonna head nod or whatever you need.
Yeah,
Thank you. So we'll bring this back at the June 22nd meeting for approval. If there's anything you see in between you'd like to email me with comments, please do.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else on that topic?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. He's already gone.
Thank you, council.
There you go. All right,
Bye now.
bye-bye.
we have a little time. Should we go to other business and maybe do some check-ins? Joe, you want to come up? You're looking up at me, so hey, you win. Big day yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your participation, and yeah, it was a good process. So thank you very much. Just real quick, we met with our insurance agent today, and as I told you yesterday, our rates were expected to go up 10 to 12%. They're going to go up about 15%. So citywide, that's about $6,000. To general fund, it'll be about $3,000. And then spread evenly thereabouts with the other funds. Should be able to absorb that and as far as budget goes, but we'll keep an eye on that just as the year goes on. Some reasons were for some of the factors that we actually talked about. Believe it or not, a lot of underwriters are very concerned about just climate change and how that's going to impact insurance rates. Values of assets have gone up because replacement costs are a little bit higher. And that's even changed since, some of those projections came out in this winter. So just want to let you know about that. But overall, good meeting. I mean, there's a lot of good things that we do and that we're covered by with insurance, but that was something that came up and want to let you know about.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm making changes as we speak with the budget book and full steam ahead.
Did you send him a copy of
No,
all
I
your
did not.
tiny little red marks?
No, I moved on.
Not yet. We might, or we can meet and go over it. It might be kind of fun,
Well, the scary part is I'm actually starting to understand what you say.
Uh-oh, that is scary.
And I don't know whether it's you're improving or I'm just understanding more. I don't know.
I think you're
which
probably
it is.
understanding it more. A little bit of both.
And I think that an estimate that comes as close to what it actually was when dealing with insurance in this day and age and fire and everything else is pretty damn good.
Yes, and he did say, I asked him about the topic we were covering regarding going out for our own insurance if we were to, and he's like, you probably would have a difficult time with that instead of going through a pool. So interesting times for sure.
Good job yesterday. Any other questions or anything? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Carrie, did you want to go next?
Sure, I don't have a whole lot. Just a couple reminders on dates. June 16th is the joint Planning Commission Council meeting. June 21st is the community celebration from 4 to 6 at Creekside Park. And then one topic which, if it needs more time, we can move it to other business, but just wanted to bring up that back in February, the beginning of the year, we talked about which meetings would potentially be canceled for the year, and we did do that in some of the holidays, November, December. But the council had basically left the summer open until we got closer to it. We are now very close to it. And so spoke with the directors today and Corey and came up with, if council would like to, have a summer break, either July 13th, 27th, or August 10th would work for that break. And didn't know if the council had an interest in addressing that or would like to just keep moving ahead.
When did I tell you I was going to be gone?
You'll be gone the 13th.
There you have it.
The longer break is between, that July 13th date does give a very long break between June 22nd and July 27th. That's the longest break. And then there's a 4-week break between the others, just as a note.
Are there any concerns about new fiscal year business or because June is so packed?
June, and the 2 June meetings are going to be very fun-filled and packed. And then we haven't yet to start scheduling July and August, so we're actually pretty wide open, and we'll probably start to fill up tomorrow morning as we move forward.
I don't have a real strong opinion other than, there's a side of me listening to your question, actually, that makes me think that a little bit later in the summer allows us some room to do anything in July if we have to, given the packed agenda of June, the fun-filled packed agenda of June. But I would also defer to the fact that we have folks here who work hard and who would like some time off, although certain people won't get it even if they think they do because of what they do for a job. I'm looking at Paul. And you really should kind of consider what works best, I think, for the team as opposed.
So we did ask that question, and the team was in favor of having some time, but they were very open to any date.
I have no preference.
Yeah, I really don't have a preference either. So you're gonna be gone for sure on July 13th.
Yeah, 2-week span there, but my question for staff is, we have that fun-filled June. By not having that meeting in July, potentially, does that give you time to accomplish the work that June meeting set up, catch your breath, have your vacation? Or is it, I don't want to say not a waste of time, but would you prefer to have a recovery period from a very difficult June workload, just by the fact that we have another council meeting in July?
Okay, so I'm gonna
It mainly impacts
well,
Gary.
And let me add one more thing to that.
let me add one more thing if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I just looked at my schedule and was planning not to attend on the 13th of July either. So that's 2:05.
So that the 13th of July would be then, and then what, 4 weeks after that?
So we would not have the 13th of July meeting. Yeah, so we'd have the June 22nd and the July 27th.
And then but we would not have the August meeting either.
No, we would have the August meeting.
We're going to
4
miss
weeks,
one.
okay.
We would just lose the,
I do know I'm going to be on the road at some point to drive to Florida to see my mother. I don't think we're going to try to fly just because of what's going on. And I'll be gone at least 3 weeks when that happens. She's not doing well, so. But I don't even know when that's going to happen. We haven't figured that out yet. So I just say, do what you want to do, make it work, and I'll try to work around it.
I'm for July 13th now, but I realize I have reservations somewhere.
Nope.
I didn't even realize that I put it right over the top of it.
so if I send an email out to council tomorrow, including Councilor Letts, who's not here this evening, and ask if the head nod is towards July 13th, then we can bring it back to the next meeting as a cancellation, and have more discussion if you'd like to. There will be an agenda item at that point.
Okay, or if there's enough head nods, you can just make it a consent agenda.
If it's a head nod, we can make it a consent agenda, correct?
Fair enough.
Fair enough?
And we all talk to Corey too all the time, so, we can, if the email's not good enough,
So you think July 13th is a head nod?
I think so.
Perfect.
I'm fine.
Thank you.
I'm glad I looked at my calendar sitting here. So, is there anything else? Any other items? you have?
That was all I had,
Snow
unless you
on
have
July
questions.
13th.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions for Carrie?
Not my problem. I'm not going anywhere.
All right. Scott?
Good evening. So just give you an update on the outdoor lighting ordinance that's working its way through the process. I took it to the Planning Commission last week, and I made a long presentation because there was a lot of information. Pretty much a complete rewrite of the lighting ordinance has ensued. So it took a long time to go through that, and we also got a lot of public comment. And the Planning Commission decided that they wanted to go back to a work session format. So we're gonna, July 7th, we're gonna take it back to a work session to work it through. So this is a good thing to make sure that they're all on board. We had like I said, quite a bit of public comment. We want to make sure that all their comments are taken into consideration, and so it'll get to you guys a little bit later than we thought. Is kind of the upshot of that, but it's proceeding.
Can I ask a question
You
about
bet.
that, just so I know what's going on? Is this a dark skies ordinance, or is this just a rewrite of the lighting ordinance?
Well, it's interesting. Our lighting ordinance right now is called the Dark Skies Ordinance.
Okay,
So it's a rewrite of the dark sky, update of the Dark Skies Ordinance.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have a question for curiosity, again, so I know it's going to, were you getting a lot of negative comments, i.e. we don't want to do this, or were you getting a lot of we're not doing enough? Or both?
We are getting mostly comments thanking us for going through this process, but taking issue with a few of the elements in the ordinance.
By dark sky advocates,
Right.
who would like to see us
Yeah.
do a lot. Yeah.
I
And to
was
just
curious.
your prior question, I mean, I think that it's, yeah, it's a little bit of both, but we're trying to figure out and shape that process and
Yeah.
conversation right now.
Right.
So yeah, as Scott said, we are working on it, and there is work to be done on it, both at a staff level and at the planning commission level, and ultimately with you all. So
Okay. I just wanted to kind of check in and make sure I was gauging the right temperature of what was happening. And so, yeah, you're working on it. Good enough.
Yep. We'll continue with the sausage making at Planning Commission, so hopefully it's in really good shape when you guys see it.
Then we'll cut open the casing and do some more.
Somebody mentioned the joint meeting, Planning Commission, I think Carrie did on June 16th, so we're preparing for that. And we will set it up in a work session format, and we'll have the consultant on hand. So that should be a really good meeting with some new information, the latest information in terms of different efficiency measure strategies we want to consider. We'll have the kind of the pros and cons of each one, housing strategies that are available to us, which ones we think have the most merit, that, you know, we'll factor in things like things such as administrative effort, how much administrative effort these things will need to implement, how many, you know, what the, how it complies with our comprehensive plan, those kinds of things. We'll have an analysis and a presentation on that, and hopefully have a good discussion with the Planning Commission to make sure that we're moving forward on things that you guys are in general agreement with, because we don't want to get to the very end and not have you guys on board as well. Working through the municipal code amendments for code compliance and getting those on board so Jacob can be fully have all his tools at his disposal to do his job. Right now, it's written more for the police department to do the citations. He made that presentation a couple weeks ago. That's working back through and should be back to you guys in a couple, actually the June 25th meeting. Continuing to do some outreach on weeds to make sure that as we're entering fire season, you know, the threshold here is 4 inches, which is interesting. And in Redmond, he said that their standard was 10 inches. So we have a pretty stringent.
My lawn's about 3.5.
We looked that up, you know, if your lawn is I think does not include ladder fills, then it would not be something we won't be going after you.
Your hair was 4.
Yes, my hair was longer than my lawn. Yeah.
So it's a pretty stringent requirement. And then just doing things, sandwich board signs, going out there, making sure that people have the permits and putting their signs in the proper locations, things like that. Matt's continuing to review the elementary school application. They're getting all their elements in place, traffic stuff. So hope to have that wrapped up fairly soon so they can move on to their next stage. Matt
Where exactly is the elementary school going?
Good question. It's going across the entrance from the high school, kind of between Highway 242 and McKinney Butte. Kind of a patch, kind of sandwiched between the middle school and the high school.
Between the middle school and the high school, basically.
Okay,
West of the
where they
football stadium.
cleared a lot of the.
Hopefully have
We always
cleared
like
trees.
having our children play along fences with as a highway.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Matt also convened the first Sisters Wildfire Mitigation Group last week. We had a good discussion. We had Jacob, our code compliance, Corey, staff, Paul, as well as Ian Reed and Chief Johnson.
You're not gonna be able to name them all.
Ben Duda.
We had almost 15
Booze
people.
Zimmerly.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're
We got
doing
some
good.
time to fill here.
That was more a compliment to, we did not only had perfect attendance by those agency partners, we had more people than we invited to some extent. And so, anyway, not to steal your thunder on that, but
It was well attended.
it was more about that
Yeah.
than you not being able to list them.
Right.
Plus attendance.
It was well attended. First of many, so I think it's going to be a good,
That's a good
productive
Yeah.
effort. And then just affordable housing efforts, we're continuing to look for uses for our ARPA funds, and we may be coming back to you at a work session in the future to kind of update you on next steps. I'll leave it to Corey to fill in the details as he sees fit on that, but that's definitely moving forward and a high priority of our city right now. There's a lot of other things going on. I don't know how much time you want me to fill, but
We don't have too much more time
Okay,
now.
I'll stop
that
there then.
Paul and I left to go.
Anybody got any questions for Scott? That was actually a lot of stuff there, so. But doesn't appear we have it.
okay, thank you.
I'll go home and check my lawn height.
Paul, you want to do a quickie or you want to wait?
I'll be quick.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you guys some timelines coming up, road construction season wise. So we got crack sealing starting next Tuesday, the 31st. Seal coating, which will be on our multi-use paths out on the west side, as well as Larch on June 1st. Overlays with Knife River starting the 20th of June. And that'll be on West Jefferson, South Pine Meadow Street, from St. Helens to Westview Loop, South Birch Street, North Rope Street, East Timber Pine Place, and then Main Avenue, which will be night work, will be a grind and inlay of the travel lanes only, because we rebuilt all the parking back in 2010, 2011. So 20-mile-an-hour signage, we got the south side done, and we'll have the north side. We're kind of piecing that in to our schedule as we can, but in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that all wrapped up. Let's see. ODOT installed a portable camera on Barkley, and it's actually on Trip Check. So you can see, you actually look back towards the roundabout, and we're using that to monitor that delay, that stacking time, especially on busy weekends. You know, typically on Sunday, that westbound traffic coming up to the roundabout, see how bad that's stacking up, and we can kind of get an idea over this summer what the peak holidays, peak times are, that we see that, and then we might make an operational adjustment with ODOT and potentially do some flagging during those few hours where it's backing up.
So it'll be there all summer?
It will, well, that's the plan.
And so we have the camera still on 20 that points at the roundabout heading west,
Correct.
as well as one on Barkley.
Yeah, this is a
Perfect.
portable camera that they stole from Powell Butte, so if it does get needed, it probably will leave, but otherwise it'll be here.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Anybody, any questions?
I have a question. In our document somewhere, do we have a master map showing all the multi-use paths and bike paths that's easily accessible?
In our TSP,
That's where I thought
We
I
do.
saw it. Okay.
actually, it's broken down by widths, the map of the entire city, existing and proposed.
And some of there's some stuff in between, because some things have been built since it was existing, and some of the proposed hasn't been built yet. Does that make sense?
I mean, we updated it, you know, it got adopted in December of 2021, so.
Yeah.
Got it. So pretty
Yeah, I
updated.
mean, Barkley and North Pine would be, I think, the only ones that are on.
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
Got it.
Coming up, yeah.
Would you like me to send that to you?
If you have time, that would be
bet.
delightful. Not a hurry.
Anybody else?
Yes, please.
You got it? I'll send it to everybody. No problem.
Any other questions?
I have a question, but I'm going to ask it offline
Thanks.
Sounds good.
about yield signs.
All right, I'm going to adjourn the workshop, and we will start hopefully on time. It's the new vocal gavel, that voice. All right, I'd like to call to order the 6:30 PM City Council regular meeting. Today is May 25th, 2022. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Roll call, Carrie.
Mayor Praden,
I am here.
Council President Conley,
Here.
Councilor Blum,
Here.
Councilor Letts, Councilor Ross.
Present?
All right. Next item is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I would move approval of the agenda.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Everybody said, that's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is visitor communication. Carrie, how many people we have?
We just have Michael.
Michael. Thank you for being here this evening.
Yeah, I don't particularly want to be here. I wrote this for 2 weeks ago. So it's the same thing, it's just added a little from timeline to then and now.
Okay. Can I just remind you about 3 minutes if I may?
Mhm.
Thank you.
And as the flag's supposed to say, any threat, foreign or domestic, but you already know, I think, that way. But you should know that too. I can only admit I am evil. Here in your city council chambers and being part of deceptive events causing the why I was here at all. A monster, plural and singular, needs food. It or they don't survive without it. I have been aware of this for a long while in multiple perspectives. This rare, logical, schizophrenic exists beyond the common walls in a conscience. This said, particularly to my mother and father, for it's why this weekend, now 2 weekends ago, wasn't how it was supposed to be. What's worse than Putin? An accepted and prevailing American morality, void of any real conscience or soul. Now stripping away my home in an amoral quick takeover without civil militant aid to intervene for a few days. So I cannot be with them appropriately one last time, as was planned, without being run over by alien forces. War bombs are small and trivial compared to the why they exist in the first place. The way what happened yesterday, I'm meaning Texas, is another demonstrating effect. What this is HELL, and I do not want your drugs, lifestyles, counseling, or a whole assortment of fulfilling those, religious or secular. So keep eating in the free world, monster. I would like to say your time will come, but you are too insulated by psychological shields and thick armor to ever be truly penetrated. It's just more food for you as you get more capricious, exploitative, empowered, and horrifying.
Thank you. All right. No more visitor communications, so the next item is the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. On to council business. Okay. This is where I start the script, Gary. All right. This is the time set for a continued public hearing on City File TA 22-02, an application submitted by the City of Sisters for a Development Code text amendment relating to on-site storage areas for residents of multifamily developments and design of mini storage facilities. The continued public hearing is now open. The continued public hearing will be conducted as follows. A, staff report and councilor questions to staff. B, entry of additional correspondence received into the record. C, opening the public hearing for testimony in the following order. 1, proponents of the changes sought. 2, opponents of the changes sought. And 3, neutral testimony. D, questions of staff, if any, by council. E, closed public testimony portion of the hearing, and there will be no further testimony. And then F, discussion by council. Regarding testimony, testimony will be accepted in person or remotely via Zoom. For those wishing to testify in person, please raise your hand and you will be called forward to speak. For those wishing to testify remotely via Zoom, we will conduct a roll call by stating the name listed for individuals. If you would like to speak, please provide your testimony after you are called. If you do not wish to provide testimony, please say no testimony after you are called. Any questions should be directed to me as the hearing chair. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record. Please speak clearly and loudly to ensure testimony is heard as this hearing is being recorded. At my discretion, I may limit testimony to 3 minutes per person. I would encourage those wishing to speak to keep testimony concise and relevant to the issue before us this evening. It is encouraged to simply agree with a point made by another person instead of remaking the point. For the deliberations tonight, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the council must use in making its recommendation. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulations that the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Testimony that is not directed towards applicable or potentially applicable approval criteria, even if a strong point, is ultimately not relevant. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in court. And now it's time for the staff report. Hello, Matt.
Good evening, Mayor. For the record, Matthew Martin, City of Sisters Planning Division. Good evening, councilors. As introduced by the mayor, we have before you as an ordinance modifying or amending the Sisters Development Code regarding multifamily dwelling developments and mini storage facilities, or in the broad general theme of storage. Next slide, please. Just to give you a bit of background on how we got here. We had the previous public hearing before the City Council on May 11th, where the matter before you was considered, testimony was received, and that public hearing was continued for further refinement of the proposed amendments as discussed and directed by the City Council at the time. So now we're back with those amendments that were included in your packet as outlined in the ordinance, which includes the findings as well as the proposed revisions or amendments to the development code. And next slide, just want to acknowledge that the proposal before you does include the requirement for storage areas as part of multifamily development projects. Those proposed changes or amendments have not been modified or revised since consideration at your previous meeting, and no direction was provided to make any changes to that section of the proposal. So what's before you more specifically are the revisions to the mini storage facility changes. I want to acknowledge that what's on the slide deck right now is what the proposal included originally, where it was a simple statement that all mini storage facilities must be multi-story structures. But in testimony received at the previous portion of this public hearing, there was concern expressed in testimony, as well as from comments from councilors and the mayor regarding the applicability of these changes to existing or previously approved mini storage facilities. So staff in consult in conjunction with city legal counsel provided and submitted draft language that is reflective of that intent. I want to acknowledge that with the construct of the code, we've added a different section, additional section to the light industrial zone specific to mini storage facilities. So you'll see that it's not in the table any longer, but rather an additional section in the code. And found this opportunity to further refine what's intended by the multi-story structure requirement, meaning that through the proposed language requiring not only that multi-story structures are required, but that a minimum of 75% of the structure must be multi-story. That was in particular in intent as expressed by the council throughout this process, beginning with work sessions to today, that it be clear that the overall development needs to be multi-story. There were scenarios that were envisioned that perhaps a project has only a portion, a tower portion of the structure that is two-story, but doesn't contain any usable areas, but only to achieve the two-story, multi-story structure requirement, to then only be developed with single story for the rest of the development. So this helps refine that intent, and further that second or additional stories of the structure include rentable units. But of more particular interest was providing an exception, as previously noted, for those existing or previously approved developments. So the language that was developed is just paraphrased on the slide, but the intent is to acknowledge that those developments are exempt from the multi-story structure standard as of that existed or were approved prior to the effective date of this ordinance. So the date of June 24 of this year is reflective of adoption tonight and a 30-day effective time period. I do want to acknowledge a Scrivener's error that was in the proposed language. In this exception section of the draft ordinance, it makes reference to subsection B, meaning a previous section. That's my error. It's intended to make reference to subsection 2 of the proposed language, that being the multi-story structure standard. My apologies for that, but I have opportunity to correct that here upon consideration. And also included in this language, based on input at the previous meeting, was that the configuration of the property also be reflective of the configuration upon the effective date of the ordinance, meaning that property is not reconfigured, expanded to then provide an opportunity for a broader single-story development, but rather constrained within the property boundary at the time of effectiveness. So next slide. So I just wanted to offer those comments and kind of background, as well as what brings us to today, and how staff has provided those revisions to the proposed amendments as expressed by the council. So at the close of testimony today, you certainly have a variety of options for close the hearing, deliberate, continue the public hearing as we did before, or any variation as needed. And we can certainly discuss that later. But available for any questions that you have now or later.
Okay, well, when we get there, we'll get down the script a little bit. Thank you so much. Have we received any written correspondence on this matter?
No, okay. No additional correspondence have been received in the record.
Now is the time for questions of staff. At this time, I will ask each counselor whether they have any questions for staff. Questions will be stated by each counselor. Staff will respond after all questions have been asked by counselors. When your name is called, please ask your questions or indicate that you have no questions. Gary.
It's a question that I'm going to probably bring up later, but and perhaps Martin can clarify. When we're looking at the 75% requirement, I don't have a real problem with that. Rental units must be located on each story. Is there some way to clarify that language to imply that 75% of the second story is rental units, not housing? In other words, you could put 2 rental units on the second story and have a nice big residence up there for a caretaker, and that would meet the requirement. I don't think that was our intent.
Certainly, yeah, good point of clarification. If that's the pleasure of the council, is to further clarify that the rentable units that are referred to are storage units rather than something different.
No, I meant in terms of that second story should be dedicated to rental units, not to housing. When we talk about 75%, so to me, it's unclear the way that's worded.
Okay, we can certainly.
And maybe I'm being nitpicky, probably am, but.
Well, now's the time to at least consider that, and if any revisions or further amendments are of interest, we certainly can refine that.
Are you any more questions, Gary? Andrea?
No, I did not have any questions that, other than I was clarifying that as well, that it just should say storage rental units instead of rental units, to make it sure that people don't think they can, that it's for housing.
No questions.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time for public testimony. We will now invite members of the audience to provide testimony. If you are providing testimony, please state your name and address for the record before proceeding with your testimony.
Todd Thompson.
Good evening. Again, thank you, counselors, for your time, your commitment to the city, and thank you, staff, for looking at this ordinance a little bit deeper. The question or the problem that I have with the proposed language is in the last sentence of what's proposed. Could we bring that up on the screen, Carrie? This isn't exactly what was written.
You want me to pull that? I can pull
in the ordinance that I received, but it has that on the end there. I'm concerned with the interpretation.
Which page would you like me to go to?
Of the new proposed language on the ordinance.
On this one?
Technology is always fun.
So the last part of that says, provided that the subject property is in the same configuration existing as of June 24th, 2022. So a couple things there. Subject property could be interpreted not just the boundaries of the property, but it could be interpreted as the buildings themselves. And configuration is kind of subject to interpretation also. A prime example, let's say I have 3 buildings that I want to add on to. I can afford to do one in 2023. I add on to that building, and now I have changed my subject configuration. So now in 24, does that mean I cannot add on to it because I've changed my configuration? And I just don't think it's clear enough so that councils, planning commissions, myself, staff in the future will understand that too. I think we could be a lot more precise and a lot clearer. I think everybody's intent from listening at the last meeting was exactly the same as what I think my intent is. But I don't know why we got to some verbiage there that really can be misunderstood in several different ways. So I'd like to see something much clearer on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
John?
Good evening, Council. John Hornbeck, 581 Larch Cascade Storage. I believe Pat's correct that the configuration language, while we may all understand that now because we've been through this on 2 hearings, I think it would be subject to interpretation. My thought was that the last meeting you had a very simple solution, and I thought it was that basically any new building or expansion would not exceed the description in the plot for the property. So if you want to keep it within the present boundaries of the property, then that makes sense. Pat's right. Any building, just by virtue of the building, changes the configuration. So I thought we were talking about just keeping the existing boundaries, and that would solve the problem. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Is there anyone online?
There's not.
All right. Does any other member of the council have any further questions of staff?
Actually, Martin, would the insertion of the word boundary after the word property solve this issue, and is that possible to do with a revision today?
I understand the interest in the clarification. So we're kind of, again, it's wordsmithing at this point. I agree that the intent is understood to remain, that the lot boundary remains in that same configuration. So what I may offer for consideration is that replacing the term, if you so desire, replacing the portion of the phrase, the subject property is in the same configuration with the lot lines are in the same configuration existing as of June 24. Lot lines are defined as the property boundary, property line boundary. So I believe that clarification, including a term that's defined in our development code, may provide that clarification.
Okay, so just to be clear, to remove the 2 words subject property and add the words lot lines, replace it with the word lot lines. Is that correct?
So
More than that.
No more than that.
I'm sorry.
Singular versus plural. So removing subject property is and replacing with lot lines are.
Lot lines are, okay. It's important when we're reading this stuff to get it exactly right if we're going to wordsmith a tiny bit.
I agree.
A possible change.
Said like a true.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I said like a true planner. It was a good solution.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Anything else?
No, that was it.
Andrea?
No.
No.
And I have no further questions of staff either. If there are no further questions, I will close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. I did want to thank you all for your comments again, though. We do appreciate it. We have now closed the hearing and must deliberate towards a decision. Our options are to 1, approve the amendments as proposed, 2, approve the amendments with changes, or 3, deny the amendments. When your name is called, please provide your thoughts on the proposed amendments and what decision you are inclined to make. I will continue going through the order until there are no further deliberations or a motion is made. So you will have the opportunity to respond and or adjust your thoughts based on the testimony of your fellow counselors. You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I am going for option 2, approve the amendments with changes with the subsection 2 correction that we discussed, changing the wording on include storage rental units, and then striking out subject property and putting or replacing it with lot lines are.
Okay. Gary?
I'm still not sure that my intent with the upper section related to the 75% footprint was clearly understood. I probably wasn't clear. I wanted to say that 75, at least the footprint of the second story must be at least 75% of the footprint of the first story. That 75% must be dedicated to storage. That's what I was saying, as opposed to, I think when I use the word rental units and housing, I kind of messed it up. I want to be clear that what we're talking about here is when you build that second story, it's storage. And I know that for those of you who might choose to do that's what you want to be anyway, that's where you make your money. But again, back to your comment, trying to think 4, 5, 10 years down the road, that we make this clear as to what our intent is. And so the footprint of the second story must be at least 75% of the footprint of the building, period. Or must dedicated to storage. I can't wordsmith as well as Martin can down there, but I want to see that 75% clarified as storage footage. And I don't know how to say it.
Matt, could you speak at all, and I don't know if this is out of procedure in terms of where we are in the process, but I mean, this is very clearly under the mini storage facility section. So I think that implication is that criteria that apply to that section are referencing that certain use and the special standards therein. So
if it is, I'm fine, but I just don't know.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if Matt could clarify that in terms of a proposal.
Or just saying rentable storage units must be located on each storage.
Well,
story.
What Corey's saying is it's under mini storage facilities already. It's
Right.
under the heading of it. So
it implies
that that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing as Gary did. I would read that and I would say, oh, I can put some apartments on the second story.
And don't feel bad. We're here to talk about this. So we're going to get it right before we're done.
So we don't do it 2 times or 3 times or 10 times.
No, we'll get it. I think we're going to be able to get this done today.
No, I meant for future council. So
absolutely.
Let's do it right.
I agree, but I'm very comfortable with it because it says mini storage facilities, and I don't need to change. I don't think it's ambiguous at all. So, but can you please clarify what Corey was saying, or at least answer the question that Corey was saying, because it's under there? Does that cover us?
I believe it does. And because these uses are specific to mini storage facilities, I do want to note that a caretaker dwelling is allowed in the light industrial zone, but that is a separate use. So if we'd be reviewing that residential dwelling unit separately or in conjunction with the mini storage facility. So I'm confident, because it's under the mini storage facility standards, that this mini storage building that's multi-story, that 75% is mini storage rentable units. So for example, that other 25% could be that dwelling unit, but it would not be containing, it would not compromise or take the place of the storage units.
Let's see if I can put that in my Frenchified English. What I think I hear you saying is that the review process in the planning department, looking at the code, if there were greater than 25% of that upper story dedicated to caretaker housing, or whatever we want to call it, and I agree that sometimes you need caretaker housing, and don't get me wrong, I like it being there, that would be evaluated separately as housing from the other development code?
Yes.
And so the mini storage code would prevent that from being more than that 25%.
Correct.
Is that what I hear?
Correct.
I'm taking a lot of trust on this because I don't like things that are ambiguous.
We certainly have the record's going to include this discussion and include that legislative intent.
Because I would like to move this forward tonight and get closure on, don't get me wrong, I think we're close. And I don't want to be the reason we don't, but I just wanted to be clear from what I heard that we have some protections here and that the protections are in the code. And it would take an action of the city council to change that code to modify what might be occurring. Is that correct?
If you were wanting to change it in the future, then
Yes.
it would take that additional separate action by the city council. I'm confident, again, in conjunction with the city attorney, in crafting the language that it achieves that goal.
And that's why I keep referring to you as Martin, because I keep thinking two first names. So sorry, man.
No problem. And then if a caretaker residence was approved, either separately or in conjunction, these standards different standards would apply to that residential dwelling unit.
But it wouldn't affect the 75%.
Correct.
That's
why I'm trying to provide some clarity on that.
And the other thing that Matt said that I thought was really important was this discussion is public record and is attached to this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I
which
had
is,
thought about that, exactly.
again, which is a good reason that why sometimes we just got to talk through this stuff.
Yeah,
And so
legislative intent, you hear
And I
that
want to
all
say
the
that
time.
I appreciate the folks that own these units coming in tonight to kind of say, well, we're reading this differently than you guys are. And because I hadn't really thought about till you said it, I went, yeah, you're right. So why we're all here.
So do we need to address that at all then
I think I'm okay with it.
So
I'm in favor of Nancy's proposal.
I am too.
And I am as well. So I think we're down to a motion, I think.
We are.
Nancy will have to make it because she
So
doesn't like to read her handwriting.
I'm going to take a stab at your wording here. So probably shouldn't use that word. I'm going to make an effort to capture what you said. I move to approve City File TA 22-02, subject to the following proposed changes. Subsection 2 should read storage, rentable, what did I put? Rentable storage units must be located on each story, or 2C. And then subsection 3, the last sentence should strike through subject property and replace it with lot lines are the same configuration existing as of June 24th, 2022. That it?
And the Scrivener error.
And the Scrivener error, yes.
If I could provide a point of clarification on the what I believe is the intent is to remove subject property is and replace with lot lines are.
Yes. I didn't read that.
We have a motion.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. It's now time for a vote. It's a roll call vote. So Councilor Letts is not here. Councilor Ross?
Startlingly so, yes.
Councilor Blum?
Yes.
Council President Conley?
Yes.
And I'm Mayor Preet and I say aye. So there we go. Thank you again to the public for helping us out. We appreciate it. Okay. Next item, go ahead.
Ordinance 523 needs to be procedurally approved now. That was just the motion for the text amendment file.
Oh, my last script, excuse me. We need to open up a public hearing for ordinance number 523. The public hearing is open. Staff comments and report. The city manager shall read any provisions from the posted ordinance.
So staff comments first.
Oh,
Yeah.
I skipped one, sorry. Please, come forward.
No additional comments beyond what was previously discussed under the text amendment public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Now it says city manager reads any revisions from posted ordinance. Is that?
No. So now you have public
Okay.
comments.
All right, I'll ask for public comments. Any further public comments? I think they left, so no. So I'll close the public hearing. It says council deliberations. Do we have any more? Or should you just get a motion to read by title only?
I move to have the city manager read ordinance number 523 by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We need to vote to be read by title only. Do we need a roll call vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. The motion carries. The city manager will read the ordinance by title.
Ordinance number 523, an ordinance of City of Sisters amending Sisters Development Chapter 2.3 Multifamily Residential District to require individual storage for occupants of multifamily developments, and Chapter 2.6 Light Industrial District to require multi-story structures for mini storage facilities.
Thank you, Corey. We need a motion to approve and adopt the ordinance.
I move to approve and adopt the ordinance as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Councilor Letts is not here. Councilor Ross?
Aye.
Councilor Blum?
Aye.
Council President Conley?
Aye.
Mayor Friedman is an aye. Motion carries and it's unanimous. All right, how was that?
Better than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. All right.
Better than I did.
Thanks, Matt. Next up in council business is a discussion and consideration of motion to approve MOU with EDCO. Councilor, City Manager Misley.
So we've discussed this a couple of times before at council meetings, and staff with help from Eric Strobel from EDCO have made the necessary revisions as you all have provided direction on. So tonight is just reviewing that and making motion and approval for the new revised MOU and forgivable loan program.
Okay.
And Eric and I are available if there's any questions.
You gotta check my notes. Councilor Ross, you want to comment on anything on this one?
I read it over and thought that it addressed the issues that I had, at least related to the duration of the employment.
Okay.
No questions, comments?
I'm good.
I'm good as well. So, guess we need a motion.
I move to approve a memorandum of understanding with Economic Development for Central Oregon for forgivable loan program and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Passed unanimously. How about that? Good job. I just like all that testimony you had to do there. All right.
Oh.
I like it when it's short but sweet like that.
Yeah.
All right. Other business. We've heard of all the staff comments except from Corey.
Sure, I'll hit on a few ongoing projects and then answer any questions you might have. So we're still working through the East Portal land transfer, the escrow process with the Forest Service. I'm confident that'll wrap up in the next 4 weeks as laid out in the purchase and sale agreement. Staff's been working with ODOT and just clarifying which portions of that land will be retained by the city, which portions will be ultimately acquired by ODOT. So we'll provide a more substantive update when we actually are moving forward with that process. Getting on the same page in terms of operations and intent is really where we're at, and then the next step will be them going through their process that's outlined by state statute in terms of land acquisition and whatnot. So we'll provide updates then. We've spent some time walking the property and visualizing it, mostly with the upcoming contract for the master planning services that we'll be bringing to you all, hopefully on June 8th is the target. So we went through an RFP process and we had one proposer there. We had interview committee participate in that process. Mayor was there and representative from ODOT, Teresa Conley, and Public Works staff and myself. Good proposal, and working on the scope of work right now in the contract. So again, you should see that here in a couple of weeks. And then we'll be getting going on that process immediately. We have a pretty ambitious timeline heading towards early winter to make sure that we can put ourselves in a position for some additional grant funds. So we're not going to shortchange the design process or public involvement process, but we are moving with intent to put ourselves in that position 6 months from now. So that's update on East Portal. Continuing to have meetings as it relates to the new destination management organization. Feeling very good about where we are in that process. We'll be officially bringing you all some items for consideration next month and into July. Councilor Conley can speak to that a little bit more if she'd like here in a bit, just being the liaison to that process. We had a meeting on Thursday, end of last week, that again went very well. 2-hour meeting, went through a half dozen agenda items, very productive, a lot of enthusiasm, and very much in line just with the timeline and schedule that we're at, that we've established, and we're right where we want to be on that process. So we can answer any more specific questions if you'd like there. And then the final piece, Scott alluded to this earlier, is we are prepping, we're working with legal to get a draft RFP put together for potential workforce housing and affordable housing developers and projects and proposals. So tentatively, I think we have that penciled in on the workshop for June 8th. May or may not have it quite ready for them, certainly for the 22nd. And the hope would be to open it sometime in July, probably. So again, that's if all the dots align, but based on sort of like some of the conversations earlier with the code amendments, I think our intent of what we want is really pretty clear. So, formulating what that means in terms of an RFP and scoring criteria and so on and so forth. And then our opportunities to assist with development, whether it's county ARPA funds, city ARPA funds, city urban renewal agency funds, or city restricted affordable housing funds, laying all that out. Really, the RFP should come together pretty quickly. So anyway, it's an important formal step to take, and we'll have a draft ready for you sometime next month to take a look at that. One of the reasons we didn't put it out sooner is we really hadn't heard a lot of interest we'd heard interest from developers, but we hadn't heard any possible combination of interest of developer and interest of available land and willing seller of that land. And so we still might not get a proposal, but we are more optimistic that we'll get somewhere between 0 and 2 proposals later in the summer when going through this process. So it's time to shift into a more formal process with that, and that's what we'll be doing with discussion of the RFP next month. Any questions on those topics or anything else?
I have reading an article in the newspaper in the last couple of days about someone who is a working individual, has a good job, cannot find housing because they don't qualify for low-income housing because they make too much money, and they don't make enough money to afford the housing that is available. And they made the statement that the places that are up for rent are requiring that they provide proof of income to a certain level in order, even if they have the money, they still have to provide that proof of income before they can rent something. And can we have something in the RFP that speaks to that middle ground? Because to me, that's what the workforce housing is. It's not housing for those who are 30% or 60% of the mean. It's for people who actually have jobs and are working but can't afford any of the housing that's available and do not qualify for subsidized housing.
So definitely some intent around what you all want to see with area median income percentages. The challenge is, and Scott and I have heard this over and over again, and we've heard from, to the same sentiment that you're making, we've heard that as well, that it's frustrating that the federal tax credits don't allow developers to use those and build units that are 100% or 120% of area median income. So, and with construction costs and land costs the way they are, you're not going to be building a project without those federal tax credits. And so it's most likely going to be the highest area median income that you could provide would be 60% with potentially some 80% units, but mostly at the 60% level. So it's a great point. It's a bigger, broader issue. The way our housing market and the federal tax credit program, inflation, stagnating wages, et cetera, has just contorted itself to where there really isn't any of that middle market housing and not a lot of support for that either. So, we could take our funds, our $125,000 in the restricted fund and say, we want it to go towards someone building 120% area median income, but that's not going to bring a 50 unit multifamily project here. Now, if we want to look at other options of working with someone who's maybe just building one ADU or, small projects, sure, I think we could go that route, but even the ARPA funds are limited similarly to the federal tax credits. So you're totally right with the thought and the need, but we're a little hamstrung with the resources piece.
I do think we need to, speaking of that, and I agree with you totally, the thing we've got to get under control somehow is the continual migration into STRs. And that's causing as much of this issue for a lot of these individuals.
When you say continual migration, what do you mean?
People turning properties that might be rental properties or telling people, well, we're going to change what we do when your lease expires, you're no longer here. That's happened to a bunch, and the house then becomes a short-term rental, or an ADU is built, but it becomes a short-term rental. And I think we're going to have to really look at, maybe what people like Hood River did, where they require, if you're going to have a short-term rental on your property, you have to live on the property with it, and those kinds of things, in order to ensure that we have housing for that 100 to 120% people available. Because I'm with you, we're not going to be able to do it through the types of programs we've been talking about here because of the federal tax credit. And so it's not a fix we're going to have tonight, but I can just tell you that I think that until we figure out a way beyond 120 or 250 feet, whatever it is, to stop the conversion of rental units in our community into short-term rentals, we're going to continue to have this problem, and we'll have it for a long time to come.
I would just refer council back to the February memo earlier, just a few months ago, that we sent out for the STR snapshot that provides some good statistics around kind of what STR permit activities looked like in the last 5 years, especially given the code provisions that were put in place in 2018. And anyway, it is a much bigger discussion than tonight.
Yes, that's right.
I think, and even in the housing, some of the housing work that we had presented recently, about 5% of our housing stock was STRs. And again, some of those are owner occupied, and about potentially 15% of our housing stock were second homes. So let's just be careful in terms of, really understanding what is eroding potential housing stock and where we can have that impact. So with the housing RFP, it won't address STRs or anything like that. And then with each of those funding sources, to some extent, they have their own limitations, right? URA funds can only spend URA. ARPA funds have their requirements. Our funds are the least amount. but they're also the most flexible. So anyway, a lot more discussion to come on the RFP and different criteria.
When I
and then
win the lottery, I'll donate enough money to be able to build that house.
Yeah. So
Get the roundabout first. No, I'm just kidding.
the $500,000
It'll
ARPA
be in the
funds
middle of the
we have
roundabout.
from the county, they come with a requirement that anybody who lives in the facilities that we spend that money on makes 60% or less in the median income.
So when we requested from the county those funds, we said that the funds would go towards a yet to be determined multifamily workforce housing rental project. And what we meant by that is that it would be, you know, in a multifamily, the apartments, right, density, as many units as we could deliver. And then with the workforce component, ideally, you know, it'd be somewhere between 60 and 120%. Higher would be better based on what we've heard, I think, generally. But ARPA has restrictions, and I'm getting clarification, but I'm 90% sure that it's going to be at that 60% area median income mark. Which there are a lot of people that do work. I mean, that is still workforce housing for sure. And so, you know, we can get updated numbers as it relates to, you know, what is 100% area median income for a family of 4 in Deschutes County. I think we should wait and look at those numbers before we comment too much on, you know, how that's meeting our need or not meeting our need. I mean, we need units across that entire spectrum, and recognizing that providing units across those spectrum actually potentially opens up units at other ends of the spectrum to help in situations. So, you know, we have such a deficiency and such a need as it relates to supply that I understand the frustration, but it will still help. So,
But it will it then come under the category of there will be a statewide list and whoever wants to come?
there's federal fair housing requirements.
So
and
it could end up not being workforce housing for anybody who lives in Sisters now.
I think we'll have to kind of carefully talk through that. I mean, it could be bringing people from other places that would join the workforce in Sisters, or it could help people that work in Sisters that live somewhere else to move here. Probably a combination of both. I know organizations go through, without breaking any rules or necessarily bending any rules, go through ways of trying to allow folks who might already be living or working here to kind of sign up first, so to speak. And I'll let them speak to that if or when the time comes, hopefully. But yeah, all the same, I mean, at least 2 of you were here during the, Ponderosa Heights and the, why am I totally blanking on their name? I'm beyond embarrassed. Housing Works, thank you. I'm like, I can name multiple employees, but I can't think of the name. Housing Works. So it's the same overall requirements, even though that was a different project at a lower AMI.
I'm not happy.
Well, I think when the RFP is designed, there's a way to craft it. So it could be the 2 beasts, a hybrid, because not all of our funds, our URA funds, say workforce housing. It doesn't say.
They do say workforce housing.
So we can set the parameters for that. We have general funds. So if we do have restrictions with the ARPA funds that are at the lower 60 to 80%, perhaps it's crafted that if you can bring, you know, whatever the parameters are, the 80 to 120%, we also have another pool of funds. And maybe that will help something be built. I don't know if it's enough of a stimulus to cause that to happen, but I think there are ways that we can work around it. There are other nonprofits. School districts have all kinds of grants for housing. So it's bringing the right partners to the table. And
I would just, I mean, we're a little off track in terms of staff comments here. So the RFP, one project, none of it is going to be a panacea. If you won the lottery, if everyone in this room won the lottery, we wouldn't necessarily solve the housing issue in Sisters. That's why we're working on the housing. We have funding opportunities, both internal, external. We have policy discussions. We have code discussions. We
still
have
have time to
growth discussions. And what we really need to do is understand the constellation of how all that fits together and not get too focused on any single one of those things. So again, I mean, we've got a lot we're working on right now and will be for the next 6+ months on this topic.
No question.
And the landscape's not gonna change a whole lot.
No.
So we'll have to decide what we need to do, right?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? No? Okay, thank you, Corey. Oh, I've lost my other page. I think it's up to us.
It is.
It is.
Anybody want to go first? Go ahead, Gary.
Actually, I'm gonna ask Scott for a little help on this.
Oh.
Because the email disappeared. I was looking for it frantically earlier to get the right information, but on June 1st, the Parks Advisory Board will, and I think some people from Cameron McCarthy as well, is that correct? I'm trying to remember what I read, but they'll be meeting at 4 in the afternoon at the park, Creekside Park, to talk with our friends from the Chutes Watershed Council about what it's looking like for the plans. Are they at a pretty good place in their head as to what's going to be happening along the creek? And I apologize because I read the email and I replied to you and then everything went away. So I probably delete.
My understanding is that the staff from the Upper Water Deschutes Council is going to come back and give a presentation on some value engineering, some changes they needed to make to their work plan based on increased costs. I think I wonder if the grant got reduced or some things that they had to deal with, that they had to reduce their scope and they had to change the plans. And we met with the Parks Board back in March out there, and we knew this work was going on. So they're circling back with the Parks Board to present the results of that work to see what they had to cut out.
And so I guess my question is, would this be something that would be appropriate for the rest of the council to hear at this time, if they have an interest?
Sure, it's an open meeting, 4 o'clock next Wednesday. We're going to be meeting out the park.
It'll be a sunny day, and we'll have
Hopefully it's
pizza
sunny.
and beer. Oh no, it'll just be a sunny day.
Oh.
And I will be there late if I'm there at all. I have my echocardiogram at 3 that day. So, but if you're of interest, might be really interesting. I think I've heard them talk before. They have some great plans for that area, and hearing where they're at with the value engineering might be beneficial if you have any interest in what's happening there. So that's on the 1st at 4 o'clock.
We can share documents and stuff too.
And then just so you all know, today is my 16th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Did
my
you
second
take your driver's
birthday. It's my
license
second
test?
birthday. So 16 years ago, I was on the operating table. So
All right. Andrew.
We're getting the new joint collaborative houseless board together in June. Haven't got an exact date yet, to look at hiring executive director for the positions in the office. I went back and looked at the meeting between the county commission and the city of Bend that you folks zoomed in on, and it is, as I thought it would be, lots of people coming from lots of different perspectives. I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity, but it's going to be a significant corralling of ideas and positions, and it's called a collaborative. So so I have great hopes, but I'm trying to temper my expectations for how quickly this will all move forward. But we're getting together in June, so got to take first steps. And what we really need is a great name. I mean, you know, something that doesn't begin with CO. So, you know, something that, there's so many homeless coalitions and so many groups that somehow we need a name that differentiates. So if you think of something, you know, in your dreams and write it down, and then in the morning it won't seem good at all. But anyway, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Just me. I'll start off with a pleasant discussion first. How's that? If you haven't seen these are hot off the press yesterday. It's the Sisters Oregon Guide for 22 through 23. There's a very nice article from Corey explaining what a DMO is. There's an article about how you can volunteer and improve the community when you're here as a visitor. It's everything that a DMO will be able to use very successfully to launch an internet account. I don't know the proper term, so, you know, I leave that to the experts in the field. There's also another large article, two of them, ads from the City of Sisters talking about how to be a good steward of the property, what small town life is like, and EDCO also has a lovely article, and we know that people come here and visit and end up saying, this is where I want to live, and the headquarter might be just their 1 or 2 person office here, but that's kind of how we roll here. So the Nugget put it out, they're probably around town by now, I would imagine. If anyone really wants to have this copy, they can have mine. And then the last is back to our discussion yesterday during the budget committee meeting. I was approached by a male and a female over the course of 2 weeks, asking if council would ever consider.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We all need to do a better job of speaking into the mics when we can. Please.
Close to the mics.
Sure
you can lean and you can look. That's what I try to do, which doesn't work perfect.
Okay. It was about compensation for volunteer activities or a stipend for attending meetings. And I said I would bring it up today for council to discuss to see if we wanted to pursue this any further. So.
I don't think we're in a situation where we need to do that, because I find that unless the community wanted to go all in, if you want to pay me $100,000 to do this job, I would take it. But if you want to pay a stipend, then that's just going to create more paperwork that I have to account for the money that comes from here and the money, the ethics and all that kind of stuff. And I don't see that that's doing anything.
I'm sorry to interject again. Can we just, based on Councilor Conley's question, can you just comment whether you would want to discuss it at a future workshop or not necessarily pros, cons?
I think we need to discuss it at a future workshop based on the comment that Susan Cobb made. I know where I am on this, and it's probably similar to someone else, but I still think we have a need to give it some discussion.
And I agree. I think that we can talk about this in the framework of an equity and inclusive discussion to try to attract more volunteers and a group of people that may feel underrepresented already and can't do meetings because they can't afford to miss work. So
childcare or something.
Yeah, or childcare or other reasons. But yes, I'm looking forward to a discussion about it. I think it's important for us to have.
And I think too, when we talk about a salary survey, and we're going on, we're looking at other agencies of our size. Oh, you can hear me, trust me. Other agencies of our size, that's an opportunity to even ask the question too, is So you could do the work at the same time, I guess is what I'm saying. But that is a workshop topic. I agree. I don't want to work the problem tonight. I just think we need to at least give it a voice because it's been brought up.
Okay.
I was going to make that joke.
Is there anything else?
No.
All right. I only have a couple of things, and I'll be brief so we can go home. But I'm obviously on the broadband action team, and somebody asked me about, I don't know if it was yesterday, about a survey they were doing, and I didn't find out, so I'll have to find out later. But it's been a monthly meeting, and there's going to be a meeting next month, so I'll definitely find out about that for you. And I've been really involved in the second thing is I'm really involved in the Oregon Mayors Association. And one of the things that I volunteered for is an upcoming task force on homelessness between mayors, so we can share information about what cities are doing differently than other cities. And that's going to be a monthly meeting over the next 4 months or 5 months. I might want to talk with you on the side and stuff and make sure that we're all kind of rowing in the same direction, even if it's in different groups. So, but I got all of the calendar invites today for the next 5 months all at the same time. So I know they're serious about it. I'm going to give it my best shot to help other mayors learn about what our situation is and sisters, and then learn from other people of similar sizes and see what they're doing. And again, a lot of these things I'm there to learn as much as I am to provide information. So other than that, thank you, Matt, today and for last meeting for getting that through. And I think that was a good effort, and I think that I really don't mind going through some of that stuff up here to get it right. And so if I don't feel bad about it at all. So I think that's what we're here for. And thank you all, staff, for all the hard work you do, and glad the budget got through and we're done.
And for putting up with us.